My friends, the Brazil you know has its days numbered. And this is not an apocalyptic prediction, but rather a cold, calculated geopolitical calculus that is already underway. What is happening right now before your eyes is the complete isolation of Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on the South American continent, and his desperate attempt to hand over the keys of the country to the biggest sovereignty-crushing machine on the planet, the Chinese Communist Party. Look at the board. The leftist beast that dominated Latin America in the last decade is cornered. The right advanced like a bulldozer in Argentina with Javier Milei. In Paraguay, the doors have closed and Bolivia turned its back. The regional siege has closed in, and the global tariff hike announced by Donald Trump in the United States was the coup de grace. What did the Planalto Palace do when it realized it was politically isolated and financially suffocated? Lula did not seek dialogue or internal reconciliation. Like any trapped beast with no way out, he called Xi Jinping directly. He went to ask the Asian dragon for help. And this is exactly where the geopolitical trap closes. If it depends on the current government's vision and the narrative shielded by the Brazilian press consortium, Brazil's fate is sealed. Will we become a satellite state? An economic appendage linked to Russia, North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, and Cuba. Nations that picked a fight with the West thinking they would be protected by Beijing and today suffer under cruel dictatorships, absolute poverty, censorship, and shattered freedoms. Is the path chosen by the current government the path of servitude? It's the path of those who think provoking the world's largest economy and bowing to the East will bring any real benefit to the taxpayer. But don't be fooled. China is not looking for partners. Trade partners prevent equality. China seeks hosts. But before we solve this equation, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like on the video because it takes a lot of work to make it. Now let's clear away the fog of official propaganda. There's absolutely no problem with Brazil maintaining commercial relations with China. No. They are our biggest trading partner in absolute volume, and selling to them is important for Brazil. The serious problem, the strategic, unforgivable failure that dooms a nation, is giving up trade with the United States and Europe to become dependent on a single customer who has an imperialist agenda. The trade relationship with China is drastically different from the one with the United States. Look at this. China mainly buys commodities from Brazil. They buy the primary product, what has just been taken from the land. Iron ore, soybeans, unprocessed meat, it's pure extractivism. They take our natural wealth, process it in Asia, create jobs in Asia, add value in Asia, and sell us the industrialized product back. Did you understand the problem with governments like Lula's? Brazil's big problem? The United States and the Western world, on the other hand, buy high value-added products. They buy jets from Embraer, they buy engines, they buy technology and manufactured goods, which create highly skilled jobs in Brazil. More important than that, who really invests long-term capital in Brazilian infrastructure? I ask you, it's the Western investor. The capital that builds industrial parks, that finances private infrastructure, and that brings real technology comes mostly from the United States and Europe. China invests strategically only in what facilitates the flow of our commodities to their ports. By picking an unnecessary diplomatic and ideological fight with Washington, the Brazilian government is condemning the country to deindustrialization and structural economic misery. Brazil is still a developing nation. We desperately need diversified foreign capital to create jobs and lift our population out of poverty. Betting everything on the Chinese extractivist model is a recipe for turning us into another Venezuela. And here we need to go down to the deepest and most dangerous layer of our analysis today. The media cartel tries to sell the illusion that China is a benevolent partner, a bastion of the so-called global South, ready to defend us from Yankee imperialism. This is the biggest lie ever forced down the throats of the Brazilian people. China is indeed the main driving force behind the advance of the left in Latin America and Islamic radicalism in the Middle East. But it has never been willing to save anyone. China doesn't want a strong partner who thinks, decides, and sets conditions. Beijing needs zombie states, economic walking dead that depend exclusively on the dragon to breathe. Look at Venezuela. For many decades, China was the main guarantor of Nicolas Maduro's dictatorial regime, along with, of course, Russia. In return, it plundered Venezuelan oil by paying humiliating prices far below global market value, keeping the dictator in power while the Venezuelan people rummaged through garbage to eat. Look at Vladimir Putin's Russia today. Being one of the most sanctioned countries on the planet because of the invasion of Ukraine, Russia would collapse in weeks without Beijing's support. In exchange for technological components and basic supplies that it can no longer buy from the West, Moscow was forced to sell its energy sovereignty for next to nothing. For Beijing, the great Russian bear has become a vassal of the Asian dragon. Now look at Iran, a brutal regime that funds terror and launches missiles at Western allies, operating under Chinese tutelage and financing to destabilize the region while delivering its cheap oil to Asia. Do you see the grim pattern? China doesn't come to anyone's rescue. China doesn't send hospital ships, air superiority fighters, or rifle divisions, Marines to liberate oppressed people. China needs chaos. It profits from the misery of others. It needs nations to collapse and become international pariahs so it can monopolize and plunder those countries' natural resources at rock-bottom prices. That's how Beijing sustains its domestic model. China now has the largest middle class in the world, with ultra-high-tech cities and cutting-edge infrastructure, but this modern comfort doesn't reach all of its more than 1 billion citizens. Only an urban elite enjoys this, while the countryside lives in rural poverty. And to maintain the standard of this urban elite and avoid an internal revolt that could overthrow the Communist Party, China needs to siphon wealth from the rest of the developing world. And yet, you will see orphans of the Soviet Union in Brazilian universities and on the internet arguing that China is a paradise on earth, the pinnacle of security and prosperity. It's the classic use of useful idiots. It's no wonder that the biggest communist influencers in Brazil went there to pursue master's and doctoral degrees funded there. The ideological takeover comes before economic domination. Now, how does this zombie state theory apply to today's Brazil? We don't need missiles falling to realize the invasion. It's silent, economic, and lethal. The Chinese strategy is to come in with infinite capital, sponsored by the state, by the Chinese Communist Party, monopolize the market, destroy national and Western competition through dumping, and, after the field is cleared, dictate their own rules. The Brazilian automotive sector is the clearest and most frightening example of what's happening right now. While traditional Western automakers agonize under the brutal weight of the Brazilian tax system, Ford has closed factories, others are laying off workers and operating in the red. Chinese automakers like BYD, for example, arrived in Brazil like a tsunami. They deliver luxurious electric cars for prices far below the real market value. How? Is it a corporate miracle? No. It's massive government subsidy. The Chinese Communist Party finances the losses of these companies with nearly bottomless pockets. No private company, whether Brazilian, American, or German, can compete with the unlimited treasury of the Chinese state. The others go bankrupt, the market becomes monopolized, and our industrial independence disappears. They don't just want our industry, they want control of our land. Just to give you an idea, recently China bought up the entire year's acai production from a state in northern Brazil. They come in, inflate the demand, make the local production chain dependent on a single buyer, and the following year they set whatever price they want. Or they simply stop buying and break the production chain. If the Brazilian producer doesn't accept, he has no one else to sell to because the competition has already been destroyed. And ironically, it was exactly to this cold and calculating executioner that Lula ran when he found himself suffocated by the diplomatic siege of the Americas. The president of Brazil called Beijing, desperate for a sign of support against Western pressure and trying to save the Mercosur-China agreement. Xi Jinping's response, a gigantic diplomatic no. The media cartel tried to sugarcoat it, but the truth is that the official Chinese statement was cold, empty, and useless. Instead of supporting Brazil, Xi Jinping used generic jargon about the global south and shifted the conversation to Mercosur, a bloc that Lula himself blew up by publicly fighting with Millei's Argentina for absolutely nothing. And to make the humiliation of the Brazilian government even worse, China reached the critical limit of 1 million tons of imported meat and announced that it will tax the Brazilian product at a staggering 55%. Not the 35%, 37% from the United States, but 55%, and Lula doesn't talk about that. Lula doesn't shout about that. Lula doesn't yell about that. Lula grabbed the phone in desperation to try to avoid this tax, and don't be naive. That call wasn't made to protect the small cattle rancher who suffers in the countryside. It was an obvious maneuver to try to shield JBS, the empire of Josely Batista, and the old backroom partners from the Planalto. But not even to protect his billionaire allies did Lula have the strength. He didn't get an inch of backing down from Beijing. China stated bluntly that diversifying suppliers is a matter of food security. In other words, we don't just need you, Brazil. You're the one who needs us. It was the definitive diplomatic checkmate. Brazil chose to fight with the partners who bring capital and technology, just to beg for crumbs from an imperialist power that wants to see us on the shelf with its zombie states alongside failed dictatorships. And the political price of this subservience is coming quickly. The press and presidential palace are desperate because their narrative doesn't match people's harsh reality. They bet that Trump's American tariff hike would politically harm the Brazilian right and destroy figures like Flavio Bolsonaro in the polls. The reality? The polls came out and the impact was practically zero. The small margin of advantage that the left still has in polls from institutes traditionally favorable to them is a red alert for the system. They know that at the ballot box, with the economy suffocated by the ideological agenda, defeat is approaching. The future of Brazil now comes down to two brutal options. Either we change course and regain our sovereignty, aligning our market with free nations that generate prosperity, or we will succumb to another 4 years of vassalage. 4 years of flattering Beijing to end up like Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. On our knees, without dignity, without free competition, and plunged into the misery of extractivism. Before I talk about the strategy on how you can shield yourself from this economic chaos and protect your own financial future, I need to give you the keys that separate those who just watch passively from those who truly understand the game. I want you to go down to the comments right now and type these two keywords: zombie state, global south. Use these words to prove that you don't fall for the official propaganda. If the country doesn't take a stand, it falls off the geopolitical map. And in your market, the mechanics are exactly the same. Today, the most valuable currency in the world isn't the dollar, it's attention. And for you, as a top entrepreneur or professional, what hurts the most is being the best at what you do and still remaining invisible. You have a great business, great knowledge, but nobody knows you exist. Have you noticed how hard it is for people to pay attention to serious content on social media? It seems like only dance videos or memes go viral. 15 years ago on radio and TV, I realized that the real formula for building unquestionable authority depends on substantive content and a solid strategy. Today, with 50 million views per month on social media, the formula has already been proven. I'm recruiting entrepreneurs and professionals who are the best at what they do, but who are still invisible. People willing to break through the bubble, be recognized at the top of their market, and have their expertise monetized here on the major networks. The game is about media, and those who understand they need to be a media company win. Your identity cannot be outsourced. The business owner needs to put himself out there. The time of recording any way you want with your phone and selling something is over. The digital world demands absolute professionalism. So, with that in mind, on August 16th, I'm hosting a fully in-person immersion, face-to-face with me here in my studio. I will personally guide you in building your authority with the lethal method that brings me these results. The QR code is on the screen. There's a secure link in the description and in the first pinned comment, but there are only 5 spots left. When the last one is taken, the steel door closes, and that's it, my friends. So hurry up. I'm going to give you 2 series recommendations, cool and fun shows without any woke culture or whining for you to enjoy with your family over the weekend. Check out our channel for series and movie recommendations with complete curation. You won't waste any more time. So I hope to see you there supporting our new channel. The link is in the description, in the pinned comment, and in the cards. And I'm doing a quick survey. Would you like podcasts from Shimon Oliveira where I can bring on guests to talk about all kinds of topics in Brazil? Comment here, I want a podcast. And I'll analyze whether it's worth starting this new journey or not. Now subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video because it takes work to make it. Here's to your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira and I'll see you next time. See you then.